Hey there everyone! Welcome to the in-review for Pathologic HD. This year, I'm trying something new, which is at the end of all the games I play, I go ahead and give my thoughts on the game in the form of a review of sorts. There'll be spoilers here, by the way, obviously. I probably should have mentioned this in the other reviews I did. So if you don't want spoilers, just don't even bother watching this. We're going to talk about Pathologic for quite some time, and I will be talking about the end in particular at the end of this video. Down in the comment section as well, you will find this typed up as a comment from me in case you'd rather read about this than listen to it and watch the review.
I had a feeling you would come.
My review system consists of a game getting a possible -7, which would be a god-awful game, one of the worst I've ever played, or a 20 for the perfect game I have played. No game has ever earned 20, and no game has ever earned a -7. And the different points you can score in each category are also listed down below. But I'll cover them here as we talk about the game as well. So the first thing I like talking about when it comes to the reviews I have for games I play would be the video aspect of it. After all, it's a video game, not a book that you're playing here on your screen. You spent all this money to enjoy. And so for graphics, I give a game between a 0 and a 3 for how good it looks. And I think Pathologic HD looks pretty good. The smirks the thugs have, the smiles that Inquisitor Aglaya gave us, the grinning face of bad grief, the discoloration of the districts as they're looted or infected. I thought these were all really nice. Yeah, and looking at Eva here, this is the first time I'm actually looking at her because I spent all my time reading the text down below and not looking at what the models are doing most of the time. I think she looks pretty cute. The scabs that are growing on the sides of the buildings, the fog and rain that fill the streets, the leaves that drift on the wind, it's a very, very atmospheric game, and while it is showing its age a little, I still think it looks pretty good. I mean, the game did only come out back, 5 years ago now? Back in 2015. I think it's holding up well. On a scale of 0 through 3, I give the game a 2 for graphics. It's good. It's pretty. For the sound, you can get a 0 or 2, a 0, 1, or 2 here, 0 through 2. And I can't really think of any sounds that are off here, with the exception of the children laughing or crying whenever you gain or lose reputation. The rain sounds like it should. The gunfire can be heard in the background among people screaming and crying in pain from the disease that they're going through. I think it's very atmospheric, and you can hear the wind whistling through the rafters of the cathedral, the sounds of doors opening and shutting, your own gunfire, and the sounds of you putting a bullet into the rifle. I can't think of any sounds that are out of place. All seem really appropriate. They all sound great. So I'm going to give the game a 2 for sound. For music, just like with sound, you can score a 0 through 2 here for me. And I think the soundtrack is great. I've been listening to it while I play other games, from like Don't Starve to Grim Dawn. The different fluctuations, inflections, and the out-of-tuneness that occur if a district is infected, looted, or if you're in combat are awesome. I'm a big fan of that in all such games that have it, like Muramasa, the Demon Blade, where it has the normal theme for an area, and then there's a combat version of it. Yeah, really, really, really well done. I really like the soundtrack for this game. I've already bookmarked several themes in particular, and I need to extract the music from this game. Really, really great. I give the game 2 here as well. Phenomenal. For the story, when all this started, when I started this adventure, all I knew about the game is that it felt thematic to play it during Halloween, and it was kind of a survival game. Maybe it was a horror game, but I wasn't sure, or it was some mix of those two things. Now that I've finished the game, I can tell you that it's a narrative about humans. It's about how they abuse power, ignore experts, and take advantage of situations to further their political and ideological agendas. It's about how sacrifice and perseverance can overcome impossible odds. I suppose the most important take, though, is that, well, it's literally about the enjoyment of playing a game of this sort and making choices that impact the world around you. I think this game did a phenomenal job of crafting a setting and then setting you in it. The strangeness of the settlement and its people reminded me of being in Sigil from Planescape Torment. The way the people talk, the butchers, knowing the lines, the sandpest, the games the children play, the necromancy and spiritualism of the Canes, they were all well told, even if it was difficult for our bachelor to understand it all. I fully believe the story is further built upon through the other characters that I haven't played yet, and I'm given what we experienced with The Bachelor, I'm willing to believe it's well told in all of them. Some things didn't make much sense, though. That's saying a lot for this game. The translation didn't make sense in some cases. I can't really understand what was going on. In retrospect, playing through day one again, okay, yeah, things began making a little more sense than they had. And also, because we're playing The Bachelor, we're not really told the inner workings of several things because we're an outsider. And I think it's supposed to make sense in that way. So, the score here is rather tough because it's a 0 through 3 for me. And I think a 2 would be fair, but I've been tempted to give the game a 3 for the story. If nothing else, because although I can't think of too much that occurred that was quotable, unlike Planescape Torment or Anachronox. You know, the atmosphere itself really added to this. It felt fantastic to adventure in this town. You know what? Screw it. Although I think a 2 would be... People would nod and say, yeah, a 2 on a scale of 0 through 3 is fair for Pathologic. I think I will give it a 3. It's one of the best settings for a game that I've played in a long, long time. Probably since Planescape Torment or Anachronox, or maybe even Amnesia. So yeah, it's really, really great. I absolutely love the story here. For the gameplay, this is scores also between a 0 and a 3. I'm torn between a 1 or a 2, but I think in the end, a 2 out of 3 is right. The game has meters that you have to manage like a survival game. Example would be like Don't Starve. It has FPS aspects of it due to the melee and ranged combat, and you have to make some tough choices in regards to risking your life for cash or items to heal people if your reputation drops. You have to acquire different types of currency to trade them with different types of people, and all during this time that you're running around, you have that clock is ticking down because you are running out of time for things you can do that day if you want to meet all your objectives. And if you don't meet all your objectives, someone gets sick or dies, and that makes it more difficult for you to complete the other objectives which are going on, and in which case you could end up in a situation where I believe even the Bachelor himself perishes at the very end. Now, I think other people, though, and the reason why I was tempted to score it a 1, is because I'm pretty sure some people will find the running around to be very boring. But, well, I think it's an important aspect of the game. You must navigate the town to meet your objectives. This means risking disease or death as you travel through them, through the looted districts or diseased districts. Fast travel, I feel, would ruin this aspect of the game. Perhaps there could have been a run option that increased your fatigue if you decided to use it to help you get from place to place a little faster. And that's really what makes me hesitate giving it a 2. Also, I suppose, this is a long game, right? I mean, it took us like 40 videos to get through it. Now, on one hand, that's fantastic, because there's 2 other characters we haven't even played. So that's 120 hours probably of gameplay here in this. But most of that gameplay, I'm going to imagine, is probably the same. You're rooting through bins, as you see me doing here, grabbing items so you can trade them with other characters, so that you can get other items, you can trade with other people, and so on, to trade, and to keep your character alive, well-stocked in ammunition and food and everything else of that sort. So, yeah, I think a 2's fair. It's good. I liked running around in the town, and I liked having to dodge the plague as it was trying to actively, literally run into me to disease me. I found the rats to be really annoying, like really, really annoying. And there's some things I think that would help improve the gameplay a bit, but I think I'm done rambling about this. So, yeah, I'll give it a 2 on a score of 0 through 3. For the Gui and Controls, I found some of the controls to be rather clunky, to be honest. There's no option to quickly cycle through weapons with hotkeys. Maybe you could argue, well, that's supposed to be realistic as you're rummaging through your pack for these different weapons. But no, I don't think so. It doesn't feel right. You can't compare clothing very well, so you have to eyeball how much protection it gives you. Ranged weapons can miss their target even at close ranges, so I think it would have been better if a damage spread was shown instead of just the target reticule, and this way it gave you an impression of like, okay, I can see this weapon actually really needs to be repaired before I begin firing it at close range at this enemy. Like Deus Ex did this back in 2001 or so, and this game originally came out in 2000, I think 5. But the HD version, you guys could have maybe added that in. I also wish there was a way, like, or at least a meter or a number to show how much each of the food pieces of food would restore for your hunger, or maybe even for like your bandages and so on, because you can just look this information up online. And after doing some testing myself when I was playing through the game on the other computer to get a better idea of what was going on in the town for the first few days, I began writing down like how much food it looked like each piece of food was restored, and thus I knew that they all heal a fixed amount of food. It's never random. What is the value that these pieces of food heal? And I think that could have been displayed to the user. I also cheesed the rats. Kind of a pun right there. By jumping into and out of the buildings to avoid their bothering me. I really didn't like how they ignored everyone else in town.
My lips are too dry.
But I suppose, now that we know the ending, maybe you could argue that makes sense. Still, I think between a 0 through a 2, I'm going to give the controls and the GUI a 1. It's not bad. I've played worse games. I think there could have been some improvements, though. For how grindy the game is, you can lose points here. I give a game between 0 or -2 for a score. There is farming here in this game, but you're timed, so it's not like you can farm endlessly, and you have to make up your mind, like, when you go out to kill the thugs, for example, or you decide you want to risk looting an infected house or a looted house, right? You have to decide whether or not you're willing to risk the costs with doing so. If you miss time fighting a thug, you're taking damage. And what does that mean? More time spent digging around in bins to find bottles, to refill them with water, trade them with a drunk so you can get a bandage to heal that wound you took. And you're also timed, obviously, fighting this. It's not like Underrail or a different game, like an MMO of any type, where you run around and you're not really timed. You can kill them all, let it take however long you want, and so it feels grindy because you have to be out there killing hundreds of them. You might want to be out here killing hundreds of thugs for their money and their claws, or looters for their crowbars, but you can't, because you can't fight looters hand to hand. They kill you. And you can't fight the thugs on the streets endlessly because they vanish when daylight happens, or you have to risk a looted district to kill them later on, which means rats. Or you mess up the timing and you take hits. And again, that clock is the day's end is steadily marching on. So it didn't feel grindy to me, even though arguably there is some grind in the game. So I'm not going to dock any points for that. Next, there's bugs and frustration. A game can score anywhere from 0 to -5 here. A -5 would be a game that I can't play or has me... like Doom 2016 did.
A town like this can't give birth to a killer.
Which was corrupt all my save files, accuse me of cheating, make me reinstall the game, and delete all my saves. and the game would crash a desktop. Doom 2016 was an amazing, fun game to play, and it was absolutely riddled with bugs. I could never recommend that game to anyone. In any case, for this game, I didn't encounter any bugs or glitches during my time playing. No crashes, no error messages, everything worked as it should. Now, there was some confusion, sometimes on my part, by the way things were worded in the quest log. Sometimes I felt like, oh, come on, you could have easily put that quest hand over the area I needed to be in, like on day 2, going back to Isidore Brock's house to walk into the infected home, because the game didn't tell me where the infected home was, as they should have done that. But still, I don't think this was a bug, and I'm willing to instead to consider that like a point in GUI or controls, which is another reason why I docked that 1 point. So I'm not going to dock any points for this game for bugs or frustration due to bugs, because we didn't really encounter any. Now for the game balance, you can get between 0 and 2 points here. I think there are definitely some choices made that made more sense to me than others, like why should I heal any of the sick lying in the street in the infected districts or risk going to an infected house? Because I could get reputation safer, easier, and without spending money by killing thugs in the street, or going into a looted home with my pistol, killing 1 to 3 looters in it. It was much safer to do those options and more profitable as well. I mean, again, arguably, you could take a hit, and that means healing yourself. But really, I didn't really consider ever healing someone who was sick, because I think we did it once just to see what it was like. And I think that's a shame, especially for The Bachelor, because we ended up being a thug ourselves, running around murdering people. Well, it's really murdered. No one cared that we were killing the thugs because they were killing other people. A bounty hunter, as it were. Only we didn't bring him in alive. It was always dead because we couldn't bring him in alive. But I think there was some balance issues here when it comes to the choices we have to gain reputation and surviving through each day. I never felt like I needed to pick a lock and kill a family in their home in order to get supplies to keep on going, when I could enter a looted home, kill looters, not suffer a reputation hit.
Your face is fading away. Are you sick or something?
And get supplies that way. But maybe I should have done that like 2 or 3 times just to see what the difference was. In any case, I think the balance could be a little better. So on a scale of 0 through 2, I'm going to give it a 1 here. For my thumb on the scale, this is basically how much did Tim really like the game. So I liked Pathologic very much. But I can also tell you it's not one I'll play often in my free time, if only because of its length. I may be in the mood to try The Bachelor again as do an off-screen roguelike run to see if I can make it through the entire game. And I fully expect to get diseased at some point and not heal it, and see how that aspect changes my attitude toward the game. But this isn't something I'm going to fire up randomly, like say Armageddon Empires that I play, or Half-Life, the first one, or Prey, or many other FPSs or real-time strategy games or turn-based strategy games. If only again because now that I've gone through the Bachelor's story, I know it. And we didn't fail to do quests for the most part. There are some things I could have done better, but I don't really see myself playing through the story again so soon. Again, this is a really long game. It would be similar to playing Disco Elysium or Planescape Torment again and making all the same choices. Now, to be fair to Pathologic HD, though, there are 2 other characters waiting to be played. And their story, again, I would imagine, is quite different than what The Bachelor goes through. I've already seen their different endings now that I've spent some time rummaging around in the forums reading what other people thought of the endings. And yeah, it looks like there can indeed be quite a few differences that they experience. And they see some areas of the game that we didn't see. And townsfolk treat them quite a bit differently because, well, they're different people. The Artemy, the Harospex, for example, he comes from the town. And so people talk to him as like he knows things already, because he does, arguably, being again from the settlement. Still, I don't think I can give this 2, because I know this is not going to be a game I grab to play it just because I'm in the mood to. So I'm going to give this a 1 on a score of 0 through 2 for how much Tim liked it. I did like it, but it's not one I absolutely loved. Wow, am I almost done already? I am. All right, so the last thing we have to talk about is the awesome ending. So you can only score 1 point here. And this is going to be really controversial. I know some people, who are among my viewers especially, who never played this game, are gonna feel like the ending was probably pretty cheap. But if I'm being honest, we saw hints that something like this was going on throughout the entire game. Like we heard the children lying or crying when we would crying or laughing when we would hear when we would kill someone, for example. Like we killed a thug, we'd hear laughter and clapping, or crying if we killed a member of the militia. This was a hint that something odd is going on, right? The tragedians and the executors breaking the fourth wall on occasion. The vagueness of the town, how there's no names. The settlement's called the settlement. The capital is the capital. The powers that be are the government. We don't really know where we are in the world. We could be anywhere. And now that we've beaten the game and that we got those dialogue options at the very end, talking with the powers that be. It all makes sense. And I was very near my guess as to what was going on at the very end of the game. Oh, or rather, let me try to rephrase that a little bit so it makes more sense. I had guessed that early on, the cutscene we saw with the children playing a game, I thought that was what was actually happening. And I wasn't very far off the mark with that, was I? We were very, very close. It wasn't those kids doing it, and it wasn't a play of that sort, but it was very close to being the case. So, in that regard, we have seen this type of ending before, right? This is a... it could be argued this is a your choices didn't matter ending, right? Like Mass Effect 3 or Crying Sons. Because we didn't save a town, right? We were a doll. We were a character, a bunch of pixels running through a game created by someone because they were bored. And they're using their imagination to create this game. But in my opinion, it's a little different than that. Because this was a what is happening doesn't matter, but what happens does. Which is a little different than what happens doesn't matter, and what happened doesn't either. It's like... this isn't going to be a good metaphor for this. Or, oh, sorry, an analogy. What's the word I'm looking for? I can't pronounce it. This is not going to be something that makes a lot of sense to compare it to this, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's like having a dream where your choices throughout it impacts the story that you experience in it. Your memory of what happened in the dream is impacted. The people in the dream live with the choices you make. But when you wake up, did any of that matter? No, probably not. But it did when you were having the dream. And I suppose here, for example, at the very end of the game, we destroyed the town. We found a way to preserve human life in the form of the specular tower, extending human life just like we wanted to, with the Bachelor wanted to via his time in Thanatica. We helped Maria Kane ascend to her being a mistress, and we saved the lives of all the bound. We sent Vlado Gimsky the Younger to his death. We insulted the Changeling whenever we could have, and we became friends with the Stamatans. We saw our ending, and we actually, I feel, impacted this world. Even though this world was imaginary at the very end, we could have chosen a different ending. And the imaginary world would have lived on in the imaginations of those children, and perhaps these people, from their point of view, it would have changed as well. So, yeah, I think it was an awesome ending. And unlike the aforementioned games, Mass Effect 3 or Crying Sons, where we weren't greeted this time around by an uncaring Deus Ex Machinima god telling us our efforts were all for naught and it didn't matter what we did. Instead, we were greeted by a caring Deus Ex Machinima god telling us that they hoped we would save the town after all, even though the town didn't really need saving. And I think I like that very much, and I think that was handled very well, especially compared to some of those other games I had played. So, yes, this game is going to score that 1 point for me for being an awesome ending. I will never forget how this one ended. And, unlike Crying Sons, where I'll never forget that ending because I hated it, this one, I very much liked it. So, overall for Pathologic, between a -7 and a 20, Pathologic gets from me a 15. That's a high score. It's a survival game with a unique setting where you feel time slipping through your fingers and the manipulation of those around you.
When you look her in the eye, your mouth just kind of opens up.
You'll arrive for the atmosphere and you'll stay for the story. You'll rummage through waste bins for pins. You can trade them with children for bullets. You can rob a house for food. The settlement is fighting for life around you and you will help it do so or see it destroyed. The game looks good, and aside from some quirks with the controls and some game mechanics, I really did enjoy it. It's not something I would play probably more than, like, well, if I'm being honest, 3 times through, once with each character. I probably wouldn't play through the whole thing again with any one character because that's a long askance, but Those 2 times would definitely be memorable. Alright everyone, my review is over. My timely efforts allowed me to score it with my integrity unharmed. A new game will now be uploaded on my channel. Thank you for watching.